Hello and welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Wednesday, November the 5th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria, BC. I'd like to thank the volunteer crew and Shaw staff who make it all happen. We're doing a short 5-minute segment to begin the show, and our guest is Yasmin Rampuri, and she is a board member of the Administrators of Volunteer Resources of British Columbia. So Yasmin, what is the AVRBC? And what is International Volunteer Managers Day?
So I'll start with the first piece. International Volunteer Managers Day is today. It's November 5th and it is celebrated all over the world internationally. And it's a day that we get to thank all of the people who lead volunteers and who manage volunteers. And I think it's a really important thing to celebrate. We are a small but mighty group of people. We're often singular in our organizations. The Administrators of Volunteer Resources of BC, or AVRBC, is our professional body. So it supports and connects individuals who are involved with the leadership of volunteers and the management of volunteers.
You know, I agree with you. This is a very important day. I wish we all knew more about it, but I'm really glad that we can talk about it a little bit.
I think a lot of people don't even realize that managing volunteers is something you can grow up to be. So that's part of the reason why we celebrate this day. We're kind of, as I said, we're a small cadre of people. We're often the only ones in our organization who do what we do. In nonprofit organizations, the volunteers often outnumber staff, and the one individual in that workplace that manages that vast unpaid labor force is the coordinator or manager or leader of volunteers. They go by many different names depending on the organization. So we're everywhere, but we're still not well known yet as a field.
Well, you know, volunteers should be. Volunteers are great. We should, as a nation, do a lot more to celebrate all of us who are volunteers. So why celebrate leaders of volunteers?
Because volunteering doesn't occur in a vacuum. Someone needs to coordinate those folks that want to give back and want to do all those good things that one gets out of volunteering. And I'm speaking as a volunteer myself. I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of volunteer work throughout my adult life. And I think that volunteers are lauded in many different ways, and they should be. And they absolutely, we need to do more of that, and I'm always excited to find different ways and unique ways of doing that, and recognizing volunteers for what they do. And I think in lockstep with that, it's really important to recognize the folks that make it all happen for their organizations, because a leader of volunteers, one who's skilled, one who knows what they're doing, is critical to an organization's success in engaging that vast resource out in the community.
Yeah, it's an important job.
It is, yeah. So AVRBC works hard to connect those of us that do this. Professional development opportunities are something else we do. We try to inspire leaders of volunteers to do that really well. And we do a biannual conference as well. So next year is a conference year, and the Lower Mainland and the South Island take turns hosting that.
Is there some event happening here in Victoria?
There is. They're funny you should ask. There's one. So today is International Volunteer Managers Day, November 5th. And for the last several years now, the Lower Mainland as well as Victoria has had a little celebratory event. The event here in Victoria is usually held in James Bay at a venue that's very kind to us, and it's actually a former workplace of mine. And we have a nice meal and a little bit of a celebration and some door prizes, and we make a point of thanking folks that do that. We also announce the annual winner of an award that is now given provincially to an exceptional leader of volunteers.
We're not going to be able to find out about the award. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yasmin, thank you very much for coming on. And folks, volunteers. We're all volunteers. We need volunteers. Let's celebrate volunteers. Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back. This is the Walter and Jack Show. Walter, it's been a crazy week in the world.
I've been just looking at issues and wondering what are important things to bring to the show. And sometimes it's very hard to bring an idea to the show and really fully explore it. Now, one thing I was looking at yesterday, and I'm going to hold this up for the camera. I don't know if we're going to be able to get a shot of that.
and it says everybody should Google what the cancer industry doesn't want you to know.
Okay, the reason why I'm holding this up is I really want people to look at that sign and think about what it means. They're calling it the cancer industry, and that's a bit of a shock in itself to think of that it's a profitable industry, but in fact it is. And there's a point of view expressed in that video that this is just a self-perpetuating industry, that they're not really winning the war on cancer, and they quote a lot of statistics, and basically you're just as likely to die of cancer once you've been diagnosed now as you were almost 100 years ago.
Oh, so if people Google this, they're going to find a video.
Yeah, you're going to find a video, and you're going to get a lot of discussion about all sorts of different aspects about the so-called war on cancer, and there's a lot of concerns about the fact that we're really not getting any further ahead. In many cases, we're getting cancer more and more often, and we're not surviving. So there's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of media spend, there's a lot of influence on research by corporate interests with the Canadian Cancer Agency and the BC Cancer Agency. It's very hard to get real hard statistics on a lot of different types of issues around
I don't
cancer.
believe it myself. I mean, I don't believe that the cure. I mean, I don't think that massive radiation and chemotherapy are certainly not what I'd do if I was in that boat. I just don't trust it. I don't trust the whole industry.
Well, there's a tendency towards self-perpetuating whatever business you're in, and we can't deny that it influences this Western medicine, for instance, and how it operates. A lot of concerns around that. I think everybody has to come up to look at these issues carefully, and these sort of voices are not being heard enough. We're just simply buying into the line.
Voices who are saying there's something wrong here.
There's lots of concerns.
You never hear that. You never ever hear that. Certainly not anywhere in the media or in the political world.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to bring that up, leave it as it is. I hope we can discuss about it some other time.
So people should Google what the cancer industry doesn't want you to know, and you're going to find out what they don't want you to know. Okay, moving on. I sent a letter to my Member of Parliament, who is Murray Rankin. I live in Victoria. And I didn't ask, I mean, what I said was that I think we need an independent investigation into what happened in Ottawa a couple of weeks ago. 2 soldiers were killed, one in Ottawa, one in just outside of Montreal, murdered. There was an attack on the Parliament buildings. If you listen to the radio, I've heard it on CFAX many times, you hear dozens of bullets flying around the Parliament building, as if there really is a war going on in there. We find out later that the gunmen probably didn't fire any of those bullets, or maybe one, it was the police. But they make it sound like a war, and it was. People were in danger, people were injured, people were killed. But the entire story that we're being told is being framed by CSIS, the RCMP, and the corporate media. And I don't trust any one of those groups. I mean, can we trust CSIS? Can we trust the RCMP? And we know we can't trust the corporate media. So how do we know at all what really happened? And we've got to know. To me, this is a vitally important thing. And if people are interested, please contact your Member of Parliament. If you think there should be an independent investigation of what happened, contact your Member of Parliament and tell them. And plus, spread the word. This is only going to happen if lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of Canadians want it to happen. But I think a lot of us do want to know the truth of what went on, what happened. So think about it. Contact your Member of Parliament, contact the media, tell your friends, tell your family if you're interested in this kind of a thing.
Okay, Jack, I'd written down some questions just before the show. And let me just read a couple of 3 of them. Why we need an independent investigation. I absolutely agree with that. There's just so many unanswered questions. Basically, we really don't know what the ultimate goal was of the attacker in Ottawa. Like, what was the real motivation behind him? We really don't know. Apparently, there's a video made. We're going to see that.
Oh no, we're not going to see it.
Eventually, we will see.
Was there a video? Now we can't see it?
We're eventually, okay.
No?
Eventually, we're apparently going to be able to see a video that was has reportedly been made by him.
But think of that. They have a video that supposedly told them a lot of stuff because they told us what it told them, but they won't show us the video.
Exact. Well, there's a lot of questions, and also, what was the person's background? You know, he in Calgary, it's been reported that he tried to get incarcerated so he could get off crack cocaine. It was also reported that he had a history of mental illness. Then he's apparently had some type of conversion to Islam or to jihad, whatever. We don't know for sure, and it seemed to have happened in Calgary. This is what always piqued my sort of interest. Like, we had other stories of other people being so-called radicalized in Calgary. And what is that all about? Who's running that operation there? Is there some other influences that we don't know about? You know, also there's the issues around the similarities around these occurrences. A whole bunch of unanswered questions. For instance, the attempted bombing on the legislature last year by a couple in Vancouver who had history of mental illness, who were drug addicted, and there was reports of them being visited by the SUVs with the black windows and all that. Very similar to the Boston.
So the story was they had planted a bomb on the legislature building right here in Victoria on July 1st to kill lots of people. But once questions began to be asked, and it began to look like there might be something suspicious about the whole story, and that official sources might be involved in all of it, the story completely disappeared, and we haven't heard another word since.
Well, it's still yet to go to court, and we're going to see it again. But you know, another similarity was in this British Columbia incident. The first response of this folks, one of the parents of these people was, she says it's impossible. Somebody must have put them up to it. And when they interviewed the shooter in Ottawa, it was reported in the paper. The very first thing she said was, "Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Somebody's put him up to this."
This was his mother.
His mother. So you know what it means is that there's a whole lot of unanswered questions. No matter how you want to view the possibilities, we certainly haven't had the chance to really get to the bottom of it and to really try to figure out what's been going on. And I agree, we need an independent investigation. The last thing I want to say about this, and this is so darn important, because it seems like when you get into these sort of crisis situations, stuff like that, when people start asking questions and wanting to know really what's gone on, somehow or other that's undemocratic, or somehow or other it's not being loyal to your government or something. And we have to realize that in a democratic society, in a free and fair society, the right to express one's opinions and to ask questions is not just something that you tolerate. It is the key, it's the most important ingredient in a free society, is to dissent and to not go with what may be the mainstream views. This is how we form a very strong social structure, and be able to support our ideas in our society is to have lots of bases around our rationale and our analysis. And it's very, very important that we're allowed to ask these questions.
And that's exactly the point. I mean, what could be more democratic and more Canadian than an independent investigation of what happened? I would hope it would be led by the Parliament.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good people in our Parliament. I think they're cowed by the political masters. They're completely controlled. But in this issue, I mean, you know, their building was attacked. I hope they stand up and do something. Don't disappear. Don't do nothing. You're our parliamentarians. We pay you to represent us. I don't know if people want an independent investigation. I do. I think a lot of people do, because I sent out some emails and I got a pretty good response back. I hope I get a response from my Member of Parliament, Murray Rankin, but everybody should contact. We have 3 members of Parliament right here in Victoria: Murray Rankin, Randall Garrison,
That's correct,
and Elizabeth May. So contact them if you're interested. Next issue.
Well, the other thing I came in with was with I don't know if you can get a shot of my T-shirt, and I donated to the Tar Sands Reporting Project, and this is being done by the Vancouver Observer, which is an independent newspaper in Vancouver, and they've now reported that there's some people in Vancouver being sued by Kinder Morgan for trying to stop them from drilling through the SFU properties at Burnaby Mountain. Basically, people have been there trying to stop Kinder Morgan from destroying the protected habitat.
And the city of Burnaby is completely on side. The city of
Exactly.
Burnaby demands that Kinder Morgan stop. And where's the media? Why isn't this getting front page coverage in the media? The city of Burnaby does not want this American-based pipeline company going through a conservation zone and park.
Yeah.
And the media doesn't make that a story. Like, come on. It's up to us. We have to demand better from our media. Well, it's not our media. We have to demand better from the corporate media.
But anyway, the Vancouver Observer, you can go online and they just have excellent, excellent coverage of this, Jack. And part of this tar sands reporting financing is they're using to look at the Kinder Morgan activities and to show that this lawsuit that they've slapped on these citizens is just to deter any other activity, to try to keep other citizens from participating.
Well, these are $1 million lawsuits, so you bet it's going to
That's
stop
right, but they're
people.
trying to suppress
Yes.
public participation. They're trying to create fear,
Yes.
in my view. And this is the last thing in the world we need. The right to protest, as I said before, is a key ingredient in a democracy. It's not something just to be tolerated. It's the thing that holds us together in a free society, is the right to dissent. Even if you're wrong, by the way, even if your ideas aren't that good, you're going to be showing in time that the ideas aren't that good. Right now, you have these people that are expressing concerns about what Kinder Morgan is doing, and they're trying to slap them down. And I think we all have to get behind them and support them in every way we can.
So if you Google Burnaby and Kinder Morgan, you'll certainly find stuff. And if you go to the Vancouver Observer,
Yeah.
which is a great online newspaper, they're covering it. It's a very important story because we're now being told that the oil companies basically run the country. You don't like it? Too bad. Get out of our way. That's what the oil companies are saying to the city of Burnaby. For what? You know, it's getting absolutely insane in this country. Stephen Harper is a big part of it. Not that I think Justin Trudeau would be any different. And I don't know about Tom Mulcair. We don't have any democracy. We don't have any media.
Well, we have a lot of problems, and
We do have a lot of problems.
you know, every week we bring more problems than solutions, I'm sure. But this is one that I think we all can get behind. You know, it's this is just corporate crime, in my view.
But how do we get behind it? I mean, what we should be doing, I think the way to get behind it is we've got to build a media so that the public is enraged by stuff like this because they know about it. And we have to build a democracy so these oil companies can't do this to us because the public doesn't want it. So, I mean, that's what we always talk about on the show is media and democracy, and I think that is the answer.
Yeah.
Yes, we can fight them on Burnaby Mountain, and we should fight them on Burnaby Mountain, but we're going to keep losing, I think, and I'm afraid, until we really do have a media that can stand up to theirs, and we have a democracy that gives the people a voice so that not only the corporations are able to run things.
Yeah, I mean, it's a struggle, Jack, and you know, people want to have, you know, want to feel like they can make a difference in their lives. They want to feel that they can make things better, and allowing massive corporate giants like Kinder Morgan to pipe more fossil fuels to the coast in this era of climate change and global warming is just fundamentally wrong. And we're not looking at the other options for creating new energy resources, and we're just not exploring other options, or let's say our government isn't, and as long as we're allowing all these large corporations to do these sort of things.
Yeah, their time is finished. They've got to be pushed out of the country. Next issue.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about ISIS.
ISIS,
I'm
yes.
getting things mixed up here. But
Have we let? Yeah.
you know, I saw a movie not too long ago. It was called Wag the Dog, and it was starring Dustin Hoffman. And the idea behind the movie was they basically created a country, and they pretended there was a big crisis, and you know, they just created this big issue around something that was a complete invention, and it was supposed to be a comedy to a certain degree, but you know,
you mean the government created an
yeah,
enemy?
the corporate media and the government just created this whole controversy, and really and truly, and I hope I see this being said on Shaw in the next show, is that it has the same ingredients. The whole ISIS story doesn't hold together in a rational way, because where did they come from? Nobody knows where ISIS came from, really. What is really their ultimate agenda? Or do they really want to form a government? Are they really legitimate? Nobody seems to know. And by the way, we can't check their story. You want to go to Syria, you'll probably get shot. No reporters dare go there. And we're stuck in the middle of this right now, Jack. I have my suspicions, that's all I have.
Well, I've read a lot about what's going on, and all the most famous commentators in the world seem to say that ISIS was funded by, created by, started by, and is run by the United States and its allies. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's right, but I am saying that's what I believe.
Yeah.
And I don't know why our media will never say that, because it's being said around the world by lots of people.
Well, you know, it's fair to wonder about it.
Yeah.
It's fair to ask questions about it. I honestly don't know. I'd love to be able to check that official story, but I can't. And that's what we're stuck with these days. And all of a sudden, people who ask questions are somehow or other, you know, some type of radicals or some type of, you know, dissenters that are unpatriotic or something, or get into all sorts of nonsense about just asking
And completely
questions.
ignored. I mean, you ask the questions, it's never mentioned anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
Why aren't these questions being asked by our top people? Because shouldn't we know?
Well, we're buying into a war, and it's not just some little thing here. The federal government, the Stephen Harper regime, has us over there with our fighter jets and everything like that. They won't tell us how much this is going to cost, but they did tell us what it cost to bomb Libya for a week. It cost $300 million.
And we destroyed that country. That was mass murder, led by a Canadian general.
So 2 or 3 weeks into a war in over there, you could get into $1 billion.
Walter, we're out of time.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
And thank you for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back. I'd like to thank again the Shaw staff and the volunteer crew that puts this show together. It's being filmed on Wednesday, November 5th in the Memorial Arena. Our guest in this segment is Scott McLeod. Scott, you're a priest with the Anglican Church and working for the church on some very important issues. So we're going to be talking mainly about refugees, and you can introduce the subject.
So one of the things that I get to do for the Anglican Church is I'm the coordinator of our refugee sponsorship program. So our diocese, which is sort of our organizational structure, geographic area, we cover Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. And our diocese has signed an agreement with Citizenship and Immigration to be able to sponsor refugees on an ongoing basis. Our organization is one of, I think it's 84 organizations across the country. Some of them are other churches, some like other Anglican churches, Catholic Church, Presbyterian United, other faith groups. There's a number of Muslim groups and some others, and then no faith, just secular agencies who are also involved, and so maybe to launch into that a little bit. I mean, when we talk about refugees, and if you're talking to people on the street or wherever, they might have an idea of what a refugee is, and that may be related to conflict situations, war, but also potentially environmental situations, and there's a whole host of situations that could lead to somebody being considered a refugee. For this kind of work that we do, it is regulated by international law and the United Nations. So it's the Geneva Convention definition of a refugee that is at the basis of our work. And
What is the definition?
so the definition is basically somebody who is outside of their country of origin, and they have a well-founded fear of persecution, violence, or death based on their race, religion, creed, ethnicity, being a part of any sort of organization or association, and more recently additions to that include gender and sexuality as well. So
these are people who are basically in very, very big trouble. They can't even go back to their own country.
yeah, and the expectation and understanding is that you have tried to access protection within your own country, and either that act in and of itself is not safe, or you've tried to access protection and it hasn't been afforded to you, and so you've had to flee your own country. When somebody hasn't left their own country, then they're considered what's called an internally displaced person. So if you take the situation that's going on in Syria right now, all the people who are outside of Syria who have fled the country, by the Geneva Convention definition, those are considered refugees. People who are still inside Syria, who have fled conflict, they're considered internally displaced persons.
How many of these two groups are there? Do you have any idea?
The United Nations and their refugee organization, which is the UNHCR, which stands for United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, they do their best to track that. Just really rough numbers. You can find all this information online at United Nations websites, but roughly both refugees and internally displaced peoples and other people, they define it as people of concern. There's probably about 50 million people around the world that the UN considers as people of concern.
And in Syria?
So that's
But
worldwide.
in Syria?
So right now, there's 3 million people, 3 million plus people that are considered refugees outside of Syria, and within Syria, it's internally displaced people, upwards of 10 million.
So out of a population of
Have to confess, I'm not up on the
10
population
million,
of Syria, but
10 million internally displaced, 3 million refugees. We had 2 soldiers murdered here 2 weeks ago,
yeah.
and it tore the country apart. Imagine what people in Syria are going through.
Well, and they're facing difficulties on multiple fronts. I mean, there's the civil war, and then now there's the IS group, and just with cases that we're working on, and I do have to maintain a certain amount of confidentiality and privacy around details of those cases, but people that we've spoken to, especially whose families are from the north, they on the one hand have the state forces coming to them, telling them you have to join with us, side with us. Then they have sort of the rebel groups coming to them saying you have to join with us, side with us. And then now there's this whole other the IS group who are coming in, and they're not even saying that. They're just it's either you're coming with us or they're killing people. So it's astounding.
How are refugees resettled when, just in general, I guess?
So the UN uses some more sort of technical language. They talk about durable solutions. The ideal solution for any refugee is to be able to return home. Obviously, during a conflict situation, it's not possible, and so they rely on the neighboring countries to help offer hospitality to those people until such a time as they can return home. For people who are in a situation where they will never be able to return home, They talk about local integration. So that's where somebody is able to stay in a country and that country's government is able to afford them the same privileges and rights of either citizenship or permanent residency. When that's not possible, then the UN talks about resettlement, which is moving somebody to a third country, or, you know, if you get technical about it, maybe a fourth or fifth country, but a country where they will be able to resettle, where they will be able to rebuild a new life. There's many countries around the world that work with the UN on that, and Canada is one of those countries. So essentially that means transporting somebody and their family to a place where they will be safe, where they will have the opportunity to live in safety and be protected by a state where they can live in peace.
But I'm assuming we take very, 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 very few refugees. And I just heard that the federal government is talking about removing medical care for them or something like that.
So because of our healthcare system, the government has had programs to offer interim healthcare to people before they're eligible for provincial coverage. Now, the way that people come is via a variety of different methods. The work that we do, we're involved with refugees when they are overseas, and so we're talking about refugee sponsorship. But it's completely legal for somebody to come to this country and to make a claim, and so we call that a refugee claimant. And so the interim federal health care program helps not only sponsored refugees and also refugees who come of their own volition and make a claim, but also up until now, there has been coverage for people who make a claim and then that claim isn't successful before they leave.
So you do refugee sponsorship, which
That's right.
is
So we work with people who are identified overseas and then bring them here to be resettled. It's a equally important but a different kind of work, working with people who come here and make a claim. I mean, they need just as much support and just as much help, but the way that plays out, at least initially, is a little different than the work that we're involved in.
So what does the Anglican Diocese do in all of these projects?
So we essentially establish a sponsoring group who will work to do the quote-unquote settlement work. So once somebody's been identified, and that's either by through a relation, like somebody who lives here could identify a relative or a friend overseas, or there's a variety of different ways that somebody could be made known to us. We have to file papers with Citizenship and Immigration Canada. Those papers get processed by them, and then once approved, that person comes here. So we are responsible for the first year that they come to Canada, supporting them, providing housing and funds for food, clothing, all the basics for the first year. During that year, the hope is that they're able to establish themselves, or at least start to, and then after that first year, if they're not working, they're eligible for social assistance and other benefits. But during that first year, that's our responsibility.
Wow.
So
It must be, I mean, for people who have been through a situation where they're made refugees, and then to come to another country, and I mean, where there's already 1 million unemployed people here, that's a very, very tough job.
it can be. It can take years for people to integrate and to rebuild their lives. Statistically, though, refugees do tend to do very well. It may take them a few years to get themselves back on their feet again, but then they're often so motivated, and whether that's just to take care of their families, whether that's sometimes out of a sense of gratitude of not being in the situation that made them refugees again, they tend to contribute in ways that far exceed expectations. Really go above and beyond. They feel that they really need to contribute something to the country that has now accepted them as family.
Which countries do you work with or work in most to bring people out?
It's been more a situation of the people that approach us. So I've been doing this since 2008, and We have sponsored people that were fleeing the Iraq conflict. We've sponsored people that have fled the ongoing issues that exist in Eritrea. We have, we're currently involved in a program to help resettle Tibetans from northern India. We are involved in some cases helping people fleeing Syria. It's more for us. It's been more the people that come to us and bring us a case. The need far exceeds what we and the other organizations in Canada are able to offer.
I mean, just Syria, you said worldwide? How many?
Well, there's worldwide specific refugees. There's probably in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 million. And the unfortunate reality is only about 10% of those people will ever be eligible for resettlement.
Yeah.
And then in practical matters, probably only about 10% of that 10% actually ever will be resettled. And I mean, we're talking European nations, South American nations, as well as, North America, US, Canada, Mexico, like the numbers of countries around the world that are involved in helping resettle. But just the need is so great, and the need is coming from Africa, from the Middle East, from Southeast Asia, from Central and South America.
If the West would stop destroying all these countries, I mean, then there'd be much less need for any of this. I mean, what are we doing? But that's another story. Maybe.
Yeah. Complex.
You said two questions left. You said you wanted to talk a bit about myths about refugees. Maybe we should even do first, how can people get involved?
Yeah. So we work with, essentially anybody and everybody. It's not, you don't have to be a member of the church to be a part of the work of helping to resettle. So, if people are interested in helping us do this work, by all means contact us. And there's other organizations across the country. If people want, there's also an opportunity, we call it a group of 5 sponsorship. It's open to any a group of at least 5 Canadian citizens or permanent residents. You can put together a group and do a sponsorship yourself. The information is all online with Citizenship and Immigration, but anybody can do this work. This work across the country, the 80 some odd organizations and people doing groups of 5, is volunteer work. There's very few people who are paid full-time.
So probably the people who do have a chance to come to Canada are very, very lucky people, one out of a million, really.
Yeah.
You wanted to just talk a little bit about myths. We don't have any time left, but maybe one or two things.
People are concerned about security issues. The refugee track of immigration is probably one of the highest scrutinized. So people coming in via refugee stream are not ever going to be considered security threats. In terms of healthcare and sort of drain on our resources, it's just not a reality.
Probably what we get is great people. Yeah.
By and large, there's always going to be challenges, but by and large, the people that come through the refugee program are fantastic, amazing people.
So Scott McLeod, I'd like to thank you for what you're doing and for what your church is doing and for what many people in Canada are doing, working on these issues.
It's only together that we can do this, so it's a pleasure and an honor. So thank you.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back to the last segment of Citizens Forum. Our guest in this segment is Jon Del Sol, and I should say it's being filmed on Wednesday, November the 5th. Jon is the host of a great program also on Shaw Television called Pacific.ca, PASIFIK.ca, and the author of a book called Perpetual Direct Democracy.
It's a booklet.
A booklet, A Peaceful Political Evolution. And Jon, we're going to be talking about, well, let's start off with question 1. Do we have democracy in Canada?
Yes, the short answer is yes. Now, the long answer is there are many types of democracy. You have the democracy from the Athenians, where they, in a way, called direct democracy because everybody would participate. But when you look closer to that type of direct democracy, you find that everybody was about 10% of the population, because there were slaves and there were women and there were people that did not own property, so they were not allowed to participate in that great direct democracy. So the idea of direct democracy was wonderful, but it wasn't practice, really. We have democracy in other countries that we can be critical of. I was in Cuba, and I said, well, what kind of democracy do you have here with a dictator? And they said, well, let's look at your democracy and see whether our democracy is better than yours. And in fact, they show me that they have committees in each barrio, in each area of the city, and that there was some participation. Whereas in North America, they say your democracy is based on how many kinds of shampoos you have in the supermarket. You have the freedom of choosing things that you can buy. So democracy is looked from different angles. You can say we have democracy and then they don't, but if you talk to them, they say no, we have democracy and you don't. So there are many different kinds of democracy. Now, there is from 200 years ago or so, we have the kind of democracy here, which is called representative democracy. And the kings gave some concession to include some politicians, elected politicians. Of course, they still have the upper hand of approving or not approving, given the assent on that legislation or not. So, your question is, what is representative democracy?
Well, so yeah, what is and I mean, do our representatives even represent us? But what is representative democracy?
That's right. Well, we are very close to elections, and on elections day, practicing this representative democracy, what we do is we go to the ballot box and we basically legally authorize a few people to make all the legislation for us. In other words, on election day, what we do is actually we divest ourselves from the responsibility of making political decisions. So we call that democracy. In fact, it's giving up of democracy.
Yeah.
It's endorsing our power to somebody else.
If our the people we elect, and as you say, we're having a city election, very, very soon, but it's the same provincially and it's the same federally. We spend 2 minutes in a box putting an X on a piece of paper, and then for some reason, the people we elect seem to think they work for somebody else, and they completely ignore us.
That's right. So that's one of the concerns that we have with representative democracy, and that politicians will tell you that, oh, they're going to do this and they're going to do that. They choose a lot of words that will make us believe that they're in fact representing us, when in fact, once they get elected, they have their own agenda, which is not necessarily the same that they were given to us, the voters. They not only have their own agenda, but also they are dependent on the sponsors of their electoral campaign. So if the Chamber of Commerce or some big business sponsors them, gives them money, they're going to have to please and work for those sponsors, otherwise they won't get the money next time around. So that's one issue. The other issue is with parties. If you talk to some politicians, they will say, I wish I could do that, but our party line is not, we don't have that in our agenda, the party's agenda.
And it's not that you go to a politician and ask him for something, but if, let's say, in the area the politician represents, if 70% of the people want something, whatever that is, then that is supposed to be that politician's job, is to represent that. But they just say, sorry, I can't do it, and they won't do it. So
and they will also tell you that most people want something different, not what you're saying, but there is no accountability of it. So it's just they fabricate that, they create that result and say most people want a bridge here, most people want a highway here, and say, where do you get that idea? Well, I talk to people, so they choose their sources. But anyway, this is a problem, But given the circumstances that we've been ingrained in our brains for the past 200 years, that this is the best democracy money can buy, we continue to do it.
Yes.
You see, but given the circumstances that we didn't have before technology that we do have now, say 200 years ago there was no computers, no the communication technology advances that we have now, so it was difficult for people to, for politicians to get an opinion from everybody else. So it was perhaps the best type of democracy to have representation. You have to go by horse from Prince George to here to make your opinion known. So even 50 years ago it was still difficult. But since the 70s, 80s, 90s, we have internet, we have computers, we have this new technology where we can participate, you see? So the computer technology has actually changed the possibilities for people to participate. So if we have these new possibilities, then direct democracy through referendum and plebiscites is possible.
So what you would like to see is direct democracy, where on issues
That's right.
the public, the citizens vote, and therefore everybody knows what people want, and when the majority wants this, the politicians will do this.
Yeah, and another question that people ask sometimes is why direct democracy has not been adopted. You know, if it's so good, as I'm telling you, it's so good, why is that people are not paying attention? And I have thought about 4 different reasons why direct democracy is not implemented or even talked about in elections. I mean, I've heard a couple of politicians saying, yeah, I will bring direct democracy, but that's because it sounds good. But there's no explanation exactly how you're going to implement it or what exactly do you mean by direct democracy. But it sounds good. So I was listening to the candidates' debates the other day, or the candidates' presentations, and a couple of them actually mentioned direct democracy. And say, oh, that's wonderful. I don't know if they really mean it, but they do that. Now, the 4 reasons that I have thought of lately, I mean, there are not just 4, but 4 that come to my mind. The first one was told to me by a reporter in Vancouver. And he said, we'll never have direct democracy because Canada is a nation of sheeple. And of course, that is very harsh and very cynical.
A nation of sheeple.
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 Yeah, I don't know.
People who are sheep.
People
Yeah,
who are sheep.
a lot of people insult us with those comments.
That's right. But there may be some slight truth in it, that a lot of people don't really care about it, because we are under this mentality of leader, follower, which he in a very direct form says, we're sheeps.
Yeah.
Sheep. Of course, I don't think that everybody is in that category, although quite a few people do prefer not to be bothered because we're too busy looking at hockey and the sports and our gadgets.
Well, what would be, let's say right now, you know, here we are November 2014, what would be an important issue that in your mind, either provincially, municipally, or federally, that could be decided by direct democracy?
I will tell you that in a minute. Let me just tell you the second reason.
Yes.
The second reason of 4 reasons why direct democracy has not been implemented. And one is that some people really don't care. They are followers that need leaders. But another reason, I talked to Shane Simpson, who is an MLA for Vancouver Hastings, and what he said is, no, people do want to participate, people do understand, but the matter of fact is that they don't have the time for it because they have to work, and they would have to read too much. It's too much of a responsibility to have direct democracy, because you would be having to analyze things, to read things, and most people don't want to do that, so they elect me. He said, they pay me well to study the issues for them and make the decisions for them. You see, so that's the second one. Now there's a third reason why direct democracy has not succeeded, and that was given by a former leader of the Liberal Party some time ago. Young people perhaps don't recognize his name as Gordon Gibson.
Ah, yes.
And he came up and he said, the problem, literally he says, change will not happen easily because the gatekeepers, meaning the MLAs, with the power to make political change, are the same people who would lose their political power if change was to happen. So if you're sitting in power and say, I have the power of 20,000 votes, 20,000 people gave me the power legally to make decisions. Why do I want direct democracy? Means my decision-making power will be reduced to the vote of one. So it's not convenient for politicians, elected politicians, to make any changes. So Gordon Gibson said, it's not going to happen because the gatekeepers with the power to make this political change are the same people who could lose their political power if change was made. Now there's one last reason why direct democracy has not succeeded. And this last was brought about 20 years ago by a fellow called André Carrel. And he is a Dutchman who was the city manager for the town of Roseland.
Okay.
And the interior.
Roseland, BC. Okay.
Roseland, BC. Now he loved the idea of direct democracy. And 20 years ago, he convinced his city hall, the politicians, to run referendums and plebiscites and initiatives and have this, all the decisions of the city hall made by referendum. For about 10 years, they went on and they were very proud. He came to Vancouver to speak about it. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful thing. Now the problem that he pointed out is that a minister of the provincial government sent him a letter saying, you are breaking the law. the politicians are supposed to make the decisions. You in the Constitution of Canada, this André Carrel has written a book called Citizens Hall, and he proves there, Citizens Hall.
Oh, Citizens Hall,
Citizens
Hall.
Hall,
Okay.
yes. And he explains there how it's actually, they call it, they have a term here, ultra virus to the Constitution of Canada, to have people making decisions. The decisions are supposed to come from the politicians according to the Constitution and assented by the Queen. The power comes from above, not from below, constitutionally.
Pedro, I didn't think, or Jan, I mean, I didn't think you could shock me, but you have, I mean,
Yeah, but that's written in a book, and this fellow, he succeeded for a little while, and then he was told, no, you can't do that.
what was his name again?
André Carrel.
How do you spell it?
André Carrel.
Well, it doesn't matter.
André, he's a Dutchman, André Carrel, C-A-R-R-E-L.
C-A-R-R-E-L. Look it up, folks. It's
André
it'll be
Carrel.
there on the
And the
website.
book is called Citizens Hall.
Citizens Hall, H-A-L-L.
Yeah. And I was flabbergasted too when I learned that direct democracy, now we don't have much time, but now the last
Is there any
point.
hope for change in the near future?
Is there any hope? Yes. I think there is the possibility, and the possibility is a non-violent alternative type of government agency, actually not a government, but an agency that has to be made, and we should use plebiscites and referendums, not if not officially because they can do that, but unofficially, like nowpolling.ca, where we can put our ideas of how to rule, how to make rules. And out of all those new rules is going to spring a new constitution.
Pedro,
for us.
Jan, we're going to have to stop, but next time we'll talk about that. I think direct democracy is important. I just wish the country would be talking about it a lot more. Thank you, Jan.
Okay.
Thanks for watching Citizens Forum.
And then comes the pizza commercial.
And then comes the pizza commercial.
All right.
Hello, are you Mr. British Columbia?
Yes, I am.
Did you order some democracy pizza?
Yes, I did.
Well, we've got 3 types here for you.
All right.
This one is called representative democracy.
Oh, that's a
First
200-year-old.
first past the poll.
First, yeah, that's an
What do you
old kind of
think?
representation.
What do you think?
Yes, it smells old.
Old, okay. Well, let's try this one. This representative democracy, but it's proportional democracy. Now,
Yes, that's-
in 2005, 57% of your neighbors wanted this kind of pizza.
Well, that empowers the parties. I want to
it does.
empower myself, the individual.
Well, the radio said just a couple weeks ago, 67% of your neighbors wanted this kind. It looks good to me.
Yeah,
Looks
yes.
good.
Well, it's better than.
We've got one
Some
more
other
kind here. Now,
ones.
this is very new. Very
Yes.
tasty, I've heard. Now, this is called direct democracy pizza.
like that.
In 1991, 83% of your neighbors wanted this. Let's see. That smells good. Okay, well, what kind would you like? Either proportional or direct democracy?
I like direct democracy. Why
All
would I
right.
give my power to somebody else to represent me when I can represent myself?
Smells good. Okay, well,
Direct
enjoy.
democracy. Thank you.
Enjoy your direct democracy.
Yummy.